There is a moment just before the end that scientists have started to study very carefully. It does not happen in the wild. It does not happen during a hunt. It happens inside a building at the end of a long and exhausting journey, in a place filled with unfamiliar smells, unfamiliar sounds, and unfamiliar concrete walls. It is the moment just before slaughter. And what animals experience in that moment is not nothing. It is not silence. It is not blank, unfeeling acceptance. Science has spent decades now trying to understand what is actually happening inside the bodies and minds of animals in those final minutes. What it has found is more complex and more uncomfortable than most people expect. Let's start with what the body does, because the body does not lie. When an animal encounters a threat, it releases a hormone called cortisol. Cortisol is the body's alarm system. It floods the blood, raises the heart rate, tightens the muscles, and prepares the animal to either run or fight. You can measure it in a laboratory. You can test it reliably. And when researchers have tested it in animals arriving at slaughterhouses, the numbers are striking. One study compared cattle slaughtered at a facility just 10 minutes from their home farm against cattle slaughtered on the farm itself. The cortisol levels in the animals taken to the slaughterhouse were 20 times higher than in the animals who stayed home, a gap that is difficult to explain away as coincidence. The same breed, raised on the same land, by the same farmers, eating the same food their entire lives. The only difference between the two groups was the journey and the building at the end of it. That cortisol does not appear by accident, and what produces it in a slaughterhouse is not one single thing, it is many things arriving all at once. There is the separation from the herd, which animals that have spent their entire lives in a social group find deeply distressing. There is the loading onto a transport vehicle with no food or water, sometimes for many hours. There is the noise of the facility itself, mechanical, metallic, and unlike anything an animal has heard on a farm before. There is the concrete floor underfoot, slippery and strange beneath hooves built for soil and grass. There is the noise of other animals nearby, animals they have never met, packed into holding pens and already deeply stressed. And then, underneath all of it, there is the smell. Animals have a far more powerful sense of smell than humans do. Cows have been studied closely for their ability to detect what researchers call fear pheromones, chemical signals released in the urine and sweat of other stressed animals. When a cow enters a space where another frightened cow has recently stood, it can smell the fear left behind in the air. Its body begins to respond as if the threat is still present. The stress of the animal that walked through before it is passed forward through the space, invisible but measurable, carried entirely through scent. Research has also shown that the smell of blood activates avoidance and fright responses in cattle in controlled settings. In a slaughterhouse, these smells do not exist in traces. They are dense and everywhere. The animal does not need to see anything. The nose alone is enough to tell it that something is very wrong here. Pigs experience this process differently, but no less intensely. Pigs are highly intelligent animals. They can recognize individual faces, solve puzzles, and feel the emotional states of other pigs around them in a way that researchers have described as a form of empathy. When pigs in a lairage pen, which is the holding area before slaughter, hear distress calls from other pigs nearby, their own stress hormones rise in response, their bodies growing visibly agitated, pushing toward the far side of the pen, away from the source of the sound. Gas stunning. The method used on pigs in many countries around the world involves lowering the animals into a chamber filled with high concentrations of carbon dioxide. The gas does not render them unconscious instantly. Studies have found that pigs can remain conscious for up to a full minute after entering the chamber, and during that period they gasp for air, vocalize repeatedly, and show visible signs of significant pain and panic. The experience for those animals is not peaceful in any measurable way. Chickens and other birds encounter the pre-slaughter process in ways that begin causing harm even earlier than this. Many are picked up by their legs during loading and placed into transport crates in a way that causes physical injury before the journey even begins. Broken bones are a documented outcome of the loading process for a meaningful number of birds. By the time they arrive at the facility, many are already injured and in pain. Research on chickens has shown something particularly difficult to dismiss. They are capable of anticipating future negative events and modifying their behavior accordingly. This cognitive ability was once believed to be uniquely human, or at least limited to a small number of large-brained mammals, yet chickens demonstrate it. They take precautions based on what they expect is coming. Whether that capacity in the final hours of their lives translates to something resembling an awareness of what is approaching, or whether it is simply a response to accumulated pain and fear in the body, cannot be confirmed with certainty. But the experience, whatever its exact nature, is not neutral. There is something researchers call sensitization, and it matters a great deal in this context. Sensitization is what happens when repeated pain or stress causes the nervous system to respond more intensely to further painful stimuli. In plain terms, the more an animal has been hurt or frightened before a final painful event, the more that final event will hurt. Scientists examining pre-slaughter conditions have noted that the rough handling, injuries, fear, and sustained stress that accumulate during transport and the holding period do not simply add to the animal's overall discomfort. They appear to amplify the experience of pain at the very moment of slaughter itself. A body that has been in a state of prolonged fear is a body that has been primed to feel more acutely, not less. The suffering does not arrive only at the end. For many animals, it begins long before that final moment. What makes all of this genuinely difficult to sit with is that the animals themselves cannot describe their experience to us. They cannot use words to express fear. They cannot say with any certainty whether they understand what is about to happen to them. What science can do is measure the chemistry of their blood, observe their behavior across carefully controlled conditions, and compare what it finds with everything we know about the nervous systems of closely related animals. The scientific consensus, built carefully over the past several decades, is that farm animals are sentient. They carry the biological structures needed to experience negative emotional states. They do not react to pain and fear as machines react to a switch being thrown. Something is happening inside them. What that experience feels like from inside their bodies is a question that science cannot fully resolve from the outside. But the evidence makes it increasingly difficult to argue that what is happening inside them is nothing at all. There is one final thing worth spending a moment with. Animals in slaughterhouses do not understand the concept of death the way humans do. They do not know what a slaughterhouse is. They do not stand in line and watch what happens to the animal ahead of them and consciously understand that they are next. What they have instead of that kind of understanding is something older, something far more ancient, the same survival system that has kept prey animals alive on this planet for millions of years. They have smell, sound, movement, the memory of their herd, and the accumulated chemical warning signals that their bodies were built over millions of years to read and obey. And every one of those signals in that environment at that moment is sending the same message. Something dangerous is here. Something is deeply, irreversibly wrong. There is nowhere to go. That is what the research has found waiting at the end of that long journey. Not calm and not blankness, instead, a body lit up with the most ancient alarm system nature ever designed, doing exactly what it was built to do in a place where there is no longer anywhere left to run. Whether that knowledge changes the way we think about what we eat, what we accept, or what we ask of the systems that produce our food is not a question that science can answer for anyone. It is a question that belongs entirely to the person watching this. The animals at that point do not get to make any choices at all, but we still do.